All right, let's get to Eddie Yeranian. He's been so patient, live in Cairo. Eddie, you're on the air on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Thanks for waiting. Iran government seizes 2 British tankers on one day. The next day, they arrest 17 nationals, Iranian nationals, and they say they're U.S. spies from the CIA. Trump says, what the hell are you talking about? I don't even know. False, fake news. Now the Brits are deciding what to do about their tankers. Things escalating. Now, meantime, U.S. sending more troops into Saudi Arabia just in case. First time since the first Iran war, Desert Storm or whatever it was. So, what do you think, Eddie?
Well, John, Iran always plays to its own home audience. They made a specific point of raising their Iranian flag on the larger the British tankers, the Stena Impero, and that was for their own audience. So back home, their people saw that they were doing something or reacting to their perception of Britain's wrongdoing and stopping their ship, their tanker, off of Gibraltar. And yet at the same time, you have a lot of diplomatic activity going on. The Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdel Mahdi was in Tehran yesterday. Apparently, according to the Arab media, the Sharq al-Awsat carrying a message from the British Foreign Secretary. You have a story that the Omani Foreign Minister is going to be in Tehran on Saturday. And you have the Iranian Foreign Minister, Dr. Zarif, saying that Iran doesn't want to get into a conflict with Britain. And all of this to the backdrop of the new British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who's going to have this problem on his plate on day one as he takes over as Prime Minister. The British and the French and the Germans are all saying that they're going to be stepping up their patrols in the Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz. I think the U.S. was trying to get them to carry their own weight in patrolling the area rather than relying on U.S. naval warships. So perhaps that's a good thing. Of course, some politicians who are opposed to the administration will say that is making the U.S. look bad in front of its allies and that it's no longer a reliable partner. I think that's just a smokescreen. But really, at the moment, despite all the tension that we're seeing all over the Middle East, things seem to be hovering on neutral. The U.S. pulled out of several positions inside Iraq that were perhaps dangerous. We know that the Iranians have missiles in various bases all over the country. We know that the Iranians have missiles everywhere else that they control in parts of Yemen. The Saudis took out some Iranian missiles near Sana'a a few days ago. So I think things are on an even keel at the moment, but of course any small spark could set things off.
Okay, so let's get to the 2 British tankers seized by the Iranian government. They put Iranian flags on them. They're now in Iranian jurisdiction. Boris Johnson's going to come in as a new prime minister. Is he going to make a statement? Or what is he going to do? Leave him there? Negotiate?
No. Well, I think he has to give the perception that he's acting forcefully. That's the problem here. The Iranians needed to give the perception to their people that they were acting forcefully. So if everyone starts acting forcefully, you could get into a major conflict. I think we've tried to de-escalate. President Trump has tried to de-escalate as much as possible. And I think they're basically negotiating some face-saving way to trade the British tankers for the Iranian tanker off of Gibraltar. Now, some people will say that is Neville Chamberlain, but I think at this point it would serve no useful purpose to get into a war over oil tankers.
I agree with you there. John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. Eddie Yeranian with us. Eddie Yeranian, longtime veteran, CBS Radio News, Voice of America, and our man in the Middle East on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Eddie, let's get to the claim from Iran that they say they've arrested 17 Iranian nationals that they say were on CIA payroll, that they were spies for the U.S. government. That's a pretty wide net roundup. Of course, this getting back to your President Trump, who said fake news, don't know anything about it. Of course, even if it was true, every president would say that. That's kind of the way the whole thing works. So what do you think about this?
Well, that is a point. I mean, he would say that even if it were true. But I suspect that Iran, once again, as with the oil tankers, is playing to its home audience, trying to give the impression that it's doing something against so-called American imperialism, aggressive American foreign policy. And Iran, over the years, and I've covered this fairly closely at various points in time over the last 25 years, Iran arrests its own citizens on false charges all the time. I can't tell you how many people have been falsely charged in cases that are obviously false charges. So my inclination, while I can't prove it and while I don't have any inside information, is that they're just false charges, and they're just giving the impression that the Iranian regime is doing something, and also at the same time scaring other Iranians that may be favorable to the West, favorable to the U.S., to step back and not to express any sympathy with the U.S. or the West in other issues, just not to give the impression that they're pro-Western. So even that in and of itself is a major achievement for the Iranian regime, which is very, very unpopular among many sectors of Iranian society.
So this is more for domestic political consumption, is what you're saying, Eddie?
Yes, I believe so.
All right, Ed, this just in. Breaking news. Boris Johnson, former mayor of London, will be the United Kingdom's new prime minister. Some people call him a hardliner. He is a Brexiteer. Boris Johnson, we understand, has just won the UK's Conservative Party leadership. No surprise there. He was expected to win. And he'll take over from outgoing Prime Minister Theresa May when she steps down tomorrow. Johnson, former mayor of London and British Foreign Secretary, was officially named the new Tory leader today, just moments ago, beating his rival Jeremy Hunt in the final ballot of party members. They have not announced a vote on that. As Prime Minister Johnson, he's 55 years old. He'll inherit the same problems of May with a deeply divided parliament, the EU Brexit situation, and he is a Brexiteer, and so there's not going to be a lot of a compromise going on there like Theresa May was trying to do. Now, on a personal note, Boris Johnson has had a series of, how would you put this, Eddie, a series of relational issues, I guess you would say that, a various number of girlfriends and whatnot, I guess, as a gentle way of putting it. So obviously he's got that issue going on, but it didn't affect his ability to be prime minister. I'm not laughing about it. Really, I'm not. I'm just, look, I don't judge lest I be judged, but a lot of people are saying that he's had a share of women around. So we'll see how that plays out in Downing Street there. I guess we'll see who comes in and out. I'm sure the paparazzis will be waiting for him. Boris Johnson, new UK Prime Minister. It's official, Ed. What changes?
Well, I think he gives the impression that he's a much more forceful player on both the domestic and international arena. He is the kind of person that would stand up to the EU. At least he gives us that impression. He said that he would pull Britain out of the EU no matter what by the end of October. Perhaps he's going to be in the same pickle that Theresa May found herself in. But he's got a much more vocal presence, more charisma than Theresa May ever had. And he could probably command various people in his party to do things that maybe she could not do because he has more of a forceful presence. Now, is he going to find himself in a sticky wicket because of the positions that Britain is in anyway. No doubt. I mean, we'll have to see how he gets out of this pickle with Iran, first of all, before we get to Brexit. But I think he's the kind of person that would carry through with his statement, and I think he's going to pull Britain out of the EU, despite much of the establishment's desire to remain in it. They pretend that they were going for Brexit, but a lot of people in both of the British or all of the British parties were trying to stall and to buy time and to probably to abort the Brexit. But I think if anyone can pull it off, he can.
He's made some outrageous comments. As you know, I don't have time to read them all, and some are quite offensive. But I am going to read you one famous Boris Johnson quote on Hillary Clinton in the Telegraph in 2007. You ready? Hillary Clinton, Boris Johnson said, "She's got dyed blonde hair and pouty lips and a steely blue stare like a sadistic nurse in a mental hospital." Boris Johnson, the Telegraph, 2007. And there's about 100 of those. Many of them I can't even read on the air. So it's going to be interesting. He is a Brexiteer, and we'll see what flies. Eddie, Yeranian, live, Cairo. Ed, thanks for being with us, man. Always enjoy your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.